Welcome back to episode 2 of Yuckin Ball. Stoked to have you guys back with us. This is our second episode, but it's our first episode on YouTube. So if you want to watch it, make sure to go check it out. We'll have that link on our Instagram. We're going to try to keep this one a little bit shorter. We're kind of switching things up. We're going to have some new things as well as some old things in it. Just let us know in your comments what you like or what maybe we can work on. What's good, boys?
What's going on, fellas?
Another good week of baseball.
Let's yuck it up.
Alrighty, so to start off the episode today, we're going to take a glance at the MLB. Last episode, we kind of got more in-depth of each division, but for the sake of time, we're just going to do some key takeaways. Starting in the NL East, how about the Phillies? I know last episode we were all talking about how they were the hot shot, so I had a bold claim of, this is going to be the pennant winner. I don't know now. I mean, 1-5 this past week, including a win today. Swept by the Yankees at their home field. They were able to get a win today against the Mariners. And we see that they had some trade acquisitions. They were trying to be buyers, including acquiring Austin Hayes, outfielder from the Orioles, and then also Carlos Estevez, reliever from the Angels. And then, they've done just fine and, to start their tenure. They've also had some injuries, including Ranger Suarez, all-star pitcher, landing on the 15-day IL. So how are we feeling on Philly with this current downturn? Are we feeling the same, or are we going to start to panic here?
I think I definitely don't change my opinion on them. They've been good all year. And what's been the complaint the last couple of years? It's like, oh my goodness, they start so slow. When are they going to pick it up? They started off hot this year, and it's leaked over into after the All-Star break. They're definitely hitting a lull, but which team doesn't every year? It's 162. You're going to have some rough stretches, and I think that's just part of it right now. They've had guys performing at such a high level all year. They're bound to need some downtime. And I think if you're a Phillies fan, you'd rather them start having some downtime right now versus come the end of the season and especially postseason.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think in their division, I think they're safe. So at this point, they just need to ride out whatever wave they're on here, just make it to the postseason, and then I think we see postseason Phillies.
I agree with the what both of you are saying. I'm feeling the same. Not quite to the point of panicking yet. It's a week. It's only the first week of August. Come September though, if the next time we kind of do a more in-depth episode, the hour-long ones, and they're losing 2 or 3 games or they're splitting series, then numerically you're going to see those other teams, including Atlanta and New York, begin to catch up. But as of right now, as of this episode, it's a little bit of a slump, but this team is too talented for this to keep up. I would be shocked if we keep talking about this and a closer run between the NL East. But for the sake of the NL East and good performers, we have the Atlanta Braves. That's my next takeaway. And they've been dominant. We see that even with, had a great discussion about Acuna and just because he's out, I don't think he's going to make it. I don't know. They still have the talent on there, and they also acquired some talent, including some familiar faces from the 2021 champions, including Jorge Soler acquiring him and Luke Jackson from the Giants. And he came up pretty big. One of those wins against the Brewers, having a clutch RBI, which started a hot streak, a hot run, which led to a victory against the Brewers, and also wins against a layup series in Miami. So, and another thing too, we had to talk about also, Matt Olson has kind of had an off year, low average, but we're starting to see that power come back. 40 home run guy in the past multiple times, hitting 3 home runs this past week. We also see that Austin Riley is currently on a 4-game hitting streak. And these two, they need to ramp it up, continue that to help out Marcell Ozuna, who has been a surprise spark in that offense that's definitely been needed. I think that's really been keeping this offense afloat. So, with that being said, and after what we just discussed with the Phillies, is there a great chance, or is it kind of more just a fleeting hope that they're going to catch up with the Phillies for the number 1 spot in that division?
I think it's more of a we'll wait and see kind of thing, because we know that even with all these injuries, they certainly still have the talent to do it. I mean, this has been a winning team for how many years, even without some of their stars. But also, they've had the number 1 seed for the wild card all year. They had it on lock with, I don't remember how many games, I want to say 5+ games above the next team. And even though the guys are still starting to, get going, they're only a half game up on the Padres right now for the number 1 seed. And the Diamondbacks are only a half game back of the pod. So I think it's kind of waiting. We'll see. Like, if they start picking it up, I think there's totally a chance they get in. I think it would be more surprising if they didn't. But I don't think that they're battling for the division this year. I think it's definitely wild card or bust.
Yeah, I think they're wild card for sure. I think coming into this weekend here, this 4-game series with Miami, they split that. They lost yesterday, and then they lost today Sunday pretty bad, 0-7. They gained 3 out in the 5th inning against a demoralized Marlins team.
Minor league team.
So I mean, that's not that. Now they're going into the Brewers. Their schedule's looking okay. Lots of Phillies and Twins coming up, but I don't see them catching the Phillies, especially after this series here against the Marlins. That's looking pretty bad.
Well, I think we can all agree that just off name value and what we've seen in the past, talent is there. And I was doing some research, and I must be losing my memory, but you know who also wasn't on that championship team in 2021 that was active? Ronald Acuna. He wasn't there. He had torn his other ACL, and they still ended up winning. So there is a possibility. I don't think it's as strong as it was in 2021. They captured a special kind of magic there. But who knows in the postseason? You just got to get there. And then my third team in the NL that's kind of stood out to us was the Arizona Diamondbacks. So we know that especially they've been dominant too, along with another team battling for second, the San Diego Padres. And they have been dominant, including sweeping the Nationals and then that series with the Pirates. Tal Marte, we know what he's been doing, all-star second baseman. Christian Walker has been a good bat. He's on the IL right now, but he's provided them that consistent spark that he's been for the D-back for the last couple years. And then we've also seen recent bursts of offense from other guys in the lineup, including Eugenio Suarez with that 3-home-run game. New acquisition Josh Bell, which I like this little point from Sarah Langs of MLB.com. He's the 5th player since 1900 to homer in his first game with the team after changing teams midseason multiple times. Instant offense, true microwave right there. And then also a good couple weeks from Jock Peterson and Jake McCarthy have really helped out the team in terms of offense. And also that walk-off from Corbin Carroll, I believe it was this past Monday. It's good to see him, try to ramp it back up to what we've seen. But at the same time, we've seen that the D-backs, their pitching has definitely taken a downturn, especially from last year. Zach Gallen's the only starting pitcher with a ERA lower than 3.6. Everyone's up around the 4 or even the 5. So I think for me that the Diamondbacks, they do have a lot to work on. But do you think that with what we've seen right now, do the Padres, without having to have any bias here, just basing off the team right now and what we've seen through the first 110 games, do the Padres or the Diamondbacks, who has a better shot of making more noise in the postseason?
I want to say that it's still the Padres because their pitching is better. I think that they do have more depth in the lineup, not only because their stars are playing, but they've been on a run for a little while here, and this is still without Musgroves. This is without Darvish, and of course, the superstar Tatis. So I want to say Padres, but you just can't count out the Snakes. I didn't think that they should have been in the World Series last year, yet they certainly proved me wrong. This year, I would say that their ceiling is finishing behind the Dodgers and then the Padres, so 3rd place in the division. But here they are, half game behind the Padres. So as much as I'd like to count them out, they're getting the boost that they need from the rest of the offense. We said they need to start getting going. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but they certainly have picked it up, especially the non-superstar guys, you could say. They're starting to pick up the slack.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to get into it too much. It's a little foreshadowing for the later part of our pod here. Lots of guys on our list from the Diamondbacks, but I really think it comes down to who's winning series. If either the Padres or the Diamondbacks start dropping games, start dropping series, that could be their season. So as much as I want to say the Padres, and I do think the Padres have more talent on offense and in their pitching staff, it really just comes down to who's going to keep winning games and who slumps.
That's very true. It's definitely going to be a series by series approach. And once we come to September, we know every game really matters, and that's definitely going to be true here in this race for the NL wild card. So now moving on to the American League, first team that stood out to me is New York Yankees. We know that they made some moves, most notably going out and getting Jazz Chisholm for the Marlins. And, he assisted big time in that sweep against the Phillies in Philadelphia, winning two home run games in game 1 and 2, which your boy called. And then now, they're in a tiebreaker with the Orioles. So, with that being said, and now we're seeing after his 41st home run, Aaron Judge is getting the early 2000s Barry Bonds treatment. They'd rather walk the guy than worry about him putting one into the right field stands. So, do we think Aaron Judge is going to be unanimous MVP?
I think if he keeps on this pace, I don't think there's really enough of an argument. I think Gunnar Henderson and Bobby Witt have great arguments for it, but I think Judge is just on a different level. And he's been the only consistent guy for the majority of the year, really putting the Yanks on his back and keeping them afloat. They've been sputtering, and they do have some guys that have put up some nice numbers, but even Soto, who's arguably their best or second best player, even he's been inconsistent. So I think Judge there still has it because not only is he carrying that team, but that dude can't help but hit homers. It's not even fair watching him play. He's a monster out there.
Well, he's too big not to be hitting home runs. That dude is literally Paul Bunyan out there.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a rule against how many times you can intentionally walk a dude.
I wish there was. That would make it more fun.
They walked him 3 times today. They won off the back of DJ LeMahieu in the bottom of the 10th. Judge is the unanimous MVP of the AL, but that's going to hurt their chances, I think, to keep their spot or even make it in the wild card spot if the teams that they're playing against are allowed to just walk him all the time. That's going to hurt their offense. So unless something's done about that, I'm kind of worried the Captain America out there in Yankee land's getting put on the bench, and it's not even his fault.
Well, based off just knowledge of what I know, every single at bat, you can walk him. I think like I said, I made the reference to Barry Bonds. He was walked in the World Series, top of the 9th, bases loaded. They intentionally walked him to walk a run in. You can walk a guy how many times you want. And I saw I saw a photo on social media of the comparison of Aaron Judge's stats in his MVP season to now. He's literally blowing out every stat by a grand margin. We are looking at the unanimous MVP right here. And even if he is getting intentionally walked, for the rest of his, season, you look at that, he might break Barry Bonds' record. I think off that, he would win it. But at the same time, the offense is kind of sputtering, but the pieces are still there. We're seeing DJ LeMahieu come back to what he was. Remember, he's a Padre killer for the Rockies. Him, Charlie Blackmon, Nolan Arenado. He used to clap the pods. Kind of looks like that today. And, Juan Soto is still Juan Soto. The Bronx, perfect fit for him. Still is the great hitter that we know he is. And then here's another thing, too. Not as serious, but we saw Gleyber Torres get benched for his lack of running. Thought he pimped a home run. Ended up being a long single. So, do you think Gleyber Torres is going to be the next Gary Sanchez, exiled by Aaron Boone for his laziness?
I don't know. Honestly, I think, again, kind of wait and see. I know that's a super plain and vanilla answer, but I think you hope that when you see that, he was not happy about that, right? On either end, Boone was not happy when that happened, and then he was not happy to be benched. But I think hopefully that lights the fire underneath him, gets him out of that laziness. Next time, be hustling. You got to play like a minor leaguer being called up. It's your last shot. When guys, I don't care how big your contract is, I don't care how good your stats are, you can't be moseying around the park, let alone something like that. When you are having some lulls on offense, you got to be hustling out there. And I think, not to take away from your point there, but last week we were talking about who you taking, Yankees or Baltimore. I think that's why me and Jay took Baltimore last week, is just because of the depth. You're not having that issue on the Orioles right now, especially because they're younger as well. But I mean, they don't have an Aaron Judge. Obviously, Gunnar is incredible, but they just have so much more depth. So I think that's just what we're going to kind of see. If the rest of the depth can kind of pick up the pace and try to follow in his footsteps out there with the Yanks, they'll be able to pick it up for sure.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it lights a fire under Glaber, but again, like with what Ronnie's saying, they don't have the depth of an Orioles. Who else are they going to really put out there for long term? That, you know, Glaber has times where he's electric on offense. Who else are they going to really replace that with? So it's kind of and to me, it's kind of a wash. It could go either way, but I don't really feel like there's somebody else out there that they can plug in to fill his void.
I think that's true for the most part. I mean, they do have pieces. You know, we got, especially after Chisholm, we got Volpe. He's the everyday shortstop, and then you have a mix of, and then Anthony Rizzo when he's healthy, he's the everyday first baseman, and Ben Rice. But and then you also have Oswaldo Cabrera. You know, he's really got at the beginning of the year, kind of just tailed off back to normal Oswaldo Cabrera, but it's there. But at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters. I mean, I think a lot of Yankee fans are kind of tired of Glaber. I think the pizzazz is definitely worn off of him. So at the end of the day, I don't think it makes any type of impact on the Yankees' chances of making noise in the postseason. So moving on to the next team, it's going to be the Kansas City Royals. So after today, we see that they are now third place in the division, but it's only a half game back behind Minnesota. So they have a 6-1 record from this past week. You know, winning that bunny series against the White Sox and also against the Tigers. And, you know, we always talk about Bobby Witt. We all know the talent that he is, but their whole team, their whole lineup is great. You know, you got Salvador Perez, you know, still a top catcher for all these years. He's the last day one from that Royals team so many years ago. But then you also got Vinny Pasquantino, you know, came back from that injury and he's been playing great at first base. Got Michael Garcia, and then we also probably have, I know once again, taking a shot at these Padre fans, Kyle Higashioka is not the best backup catcher. It's Freddie Fermin. Look at the stats. It proves it's him. And probably the epitome of this week of the dominance of the Royals is Bobby Witt hitting that walk-off grand slam. Game 1 against the White Sox, and then also 2 today, MJ Melendez hit a 3-run home run to win in the rubber match game against Detroit today. So my take from that, Southside just can't have anything good. You know, 20 straight losses helped contribute to that. And I guess my question would be, if Aaron Judge didn't exist, is Bobby Witt the 2024 AL MVP?
I think he certainly got a great argument for it. I think he, especially like if he was in the National League right now, I think there would be zero comparison. Ohtani is incredible. You got a couple other dudes up there, especially if Mookie would have stayed healthy. But I think he takes the cake easy. I know we're already kind of running over on time, and I don't want to cover too much of my who's hot. So I think we're already kind of getting a sneak peek there. But I think what's awesome about the Royals is they're kind of under the radar balling on all facets. Yes, you have Bobby Witt, but you also got the pitchers. They're balling out. And overall, you got different guys around the diamond doing their part. So I think it's easy to put a spotlight on Bobby, and he is having an incredible year, but it takes the whole team, and they certainly are doing so.
Yeah, I think like you have that argument up there of Bobby and Gunnar. Both are shortstops. Both are great players. I think that the Royals are really interesting. They're kind of like the budget Padres. They kind of pick people up off the trash heap and kind of some not as well-known names, and they make it work. They start to ball out. Again, my boy Seth Lugo lifts the pods. Now he becomes an all-star. So I think
and
that's
Michael Wacha too.
And Michael Wacha. So I think they just plug and play with guys that they have, and they make it work.
Yeah, they keep the payroll low, and it's, you know, bringing good fruit this year. And then for me, you know, with that question, you know, just the stats are just going to still favor Judge. But when I think of MVP, I think of if you take that person off that team, what does that team look like? We know what that team looks like. This team would be so trash. Salvador Perez ain't carrying this. But you had Bobby Witt, and now they're a 63-win team through 110. So for me, just to play, devil's advocate, I think Bobby Witt is just as valuable to his team than Aaron Judge is to his, because Aaron Judge has Juan Soto. Who's Bobby Witt? Have Salvador Perez? Okay, but that's just not the same. I think if Aaron Judge had went out for a period of time, the Yankees could still float. But if Bobby Witt went out, I don't think the Royals would stay afloat. They would crumble down the wild card spots, and they probably wouldn't be able to make up enough time if Bobby Witt were to come back. So there is definitely a good discussion for Bobby Witt. Today's not the day for it, but we know the talent he is. He's elite. He's special. And now moving on to the final team for AL is the other team battling with the Royals, Minnesota Twins. Now they're second in the division, and that also means holding the second AL wildcard spot. We see they have a 4-2 record this past week, losing the series against the Mets, and then sweeping the White Sox. Poor White Sox, just ragdolls. And then in 4 of those games, a stat that stood out to me, they limited their opponents to 3 or less runs. And a lot of that can be thanks to their starting pitching staff. Not to get into too much detail here, but Bailey Ober has been excellent, as well as consistency from Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan. And then hitters, we kind of talked about last episode. Byron Buxton, he was on a tear before the All-Star break, and he's still been pretty solid. And Royce Lewis has returned from injury, and he's beginning to ramp it up. But we're also seeing guys like Jose Miranda, Willie Castro, that will be the show legend, and Max Kepler put together quality games to build the foundation of this lineup around Buxton and Lewis. So, since it's so close, only a half game between, do you think the Royals or the Twins are going to be higher in terms of a wild card spot?
I want to say the Royals, but I think the biggest enemy for the Twins is if they're going to stay healthy. I don't think it's a question of can they do it as far as talent goes. We see how good they can be when they're healthy, but I think that the health is definitely their biggest issue, because a lot of their main guys, their main contributors, have a track record of not staying healthy. So I think if they stay healthy, they definitely have a great argument, but I think thus far, the Royals have been more well-rounded thus far.
Yeah, I think with the talent that they have on the Twins, it's they beat themselves or injuries beat them. Like you said, the Royals are kind of nothing without some pretty good starters and Bobby Witt. But at the same time, you keep looking at the Twins' schedule. Their schedule's looking pretty rough. Playing lots of the Royals, Padres, Braves. You got the Guardians, the Orioles. So they're playing some heavy hitters the next couple months of baseball. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep that wild card spot. But I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I would say if you're playing MLB The Show, you turn off injuries, you put those two teams together, I think the Twins win. We live in the real world. We can't do that. Obviously, if Brian Buxton and Royce Lewis could turn on that setting, they would. But that setting's definitely turned off for them, and they have injury tendency up to 80. They can't stay healthy, but unfortunately, you kind of have to just factor that into their projections. And I do think the Royals are going to be higher than them, but that doesn't mean the Twins still can't get that third spot. And I do think that's going to be what happens. I know I said in my original, or the first, the inaugural video that only one of those teams were going to be a wild card spot. Actually, I think it's going to be both of them. I don't think anyone from the AL West is going to earn a wild card spot. It's going to be a division winner, none. And then you're going to have 2 wild card spots coming from the AL Central.
I'd love to say I told you so, but we'll talk about it later. I'm not the guy to take advice on who's going to win. So just concluding that, I think it's time to move on to one of the more fun segments here, who's hot, who's not. I'm going to start it off with a guy that we talked about maybe a little too much, but Bobby Witt Jr. I think that he's a lock for who's hot. He's batting .441 in his last 30 games. He's batting just under 500 in his last 15. And speaking of the White Sox, with his 20th home run against them, he's got 25 stolen bases, and he's got an OPS at 986. And with that 20th home run, and makes him the first player in MLB history to have 20 home runs and 20 stolen bases plus in his first 3 seasons. So I think you certainly got to give him his flowers for that. And then my second player for who's hot is Eugenio Suarez. We talked about the Snakes quite a bit last ep and this one. He's someone who has been the most struck out player in the MLB for the last, I don't know how many years. But once he gets hold of one, that thing's out of here. So we talked about it last week a little bit. We said, could they heat up? And they certainly have. We see that they're back into a playoff spot. And I think that a huge reason for that is Suarez. And despite his rough start to the year, in his last 30 games, he's had 10 home runs, 27 RBI, and is hitting .324 in that span. And I think for me, the home runs are great, average is awesome, but I think the 27 RBIs is what's great. He's almost averaging an RBI a game. And we always talk about you get 3 or 4 runs a game and your pitching's good enough to hold them up, they're going to win games. And then to cap it off for me, who's not, the Phillies did win today against the Mariners, but before that, they lost 6 in a row and they were 9 in their last 11. So again, we know that they're a favorite to go to the World Series, and I don't think that's going to discredit them, but definitely going through a lull right now.
All right, so for my who's hot, we're still staying in snake land there. Really, both my picks are out in the Wild Wild West. So I say that my first guy is Ketel Marte. He's kind of the vet, the man out in snake land. I think he's been, the last couple of years, the most consistent Diamondback position player. I think he's the veteran star on that team. His last 15 games, he's had 20 hits, 8 home runs, 20 ribbies, and he's hitting .351 in his last 15 games. So again, just another bat in that getting hot squad for the Snakes there. So the Pods need to look out for the Snakes. My other guy is Brenton Doyle, center fielder for the Rockies. The month of July, he's had 32 hits, 12 home runs, 28 ribbies, and he was hitting .286. And that actually led the NL in home runs and RBIs for July. And because of him balling out this month in July, he was awarded the Player of the Month card in MLB The Show. And that all of that kind of makes me wish to see him in a different jersey that's going to make the postseason this year. But I get it. He's a young talent, and that's a good future star for the Rockies.
Very nice. Yeah, Brenton Doyle, he's a Padre killer in real life and on MLB The Show. Yeah, so for my who's hot, got 2 guys. Got Vlad Guerrero Jr. as the first one, and he might be one of the top hitters these past couple weeks. And this last week, had a .577 average, a .625 on-base percentage, and a 1.269 slugging with 4 home runs and 10 RBIs. But it's a shame it's going to be doing nothing for Toronto. But if he avoids arbitration, will Vlad be the best free agent batter this upcoming season? If Juan Soto signs that mega extension, that I think it's probably going to happen. New York's got the money, like San Diego did. And my other person that really stood out to me, I had mentioned it before with Minnesota, Bailey Over, starting pitcher. He helps make that formidable rotation that Minnesota has. In his last 3 starts, won every single one of them, 3-0. The 1.64 ERA, a .55 whip across 22 innings, and only 4 earned runs in that span. Everyone's talking about Dylan Cease and Blake Snell, the torrid runs they've been on, and rightfully so. But also, this one's kind of flown under the radar, so I wanted to give credit where credit's due to Ober. And for not, it's got to be the Texas Rangers. They had a 2-4 record this past week, and in those games, 3 of them with at most 2 runs scored, so 2 or lower. And there are expectations, or there are exceptions. Some of the games, they scored 6 and 8, but this team definitely has been disappointing, and when I looked at their schedule, it's rough. The upcoming week, they got the Astros and the Yankees, and then later Red Sox, Twins, Pirates, and Guardians. That is a gauntlet. So, the hitting's been inconsistent. Corey Seager's regressed a little bit. It's still been solid. We know he was an all-star, but you got to look for guys like Marcus Semien and Mel Palmby to step it up, kind of looking like what they were last year, or else I don't think it's going to matter. I also wanted to give one more prop out to another player that There's a really great news headline that I saw today. Willie Abreu, outfielder for the Boston Red Sox, he had a 2-home run game today against the rubber match against the Rangers. But what made it special is he dedicated that game to his grandma. He had learned after yesterday's game that his grandma had passed. You know, most people, rightfully so, would, you know, take the game off, you know, just to, you know, bereave with their family. But he dedicated that game to his grandma, had 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, gutted it out, and dedicated it to her. And that's just truly one of the special moments, you know, baseball produces. We see that every year. It's just amazing that we see that for the game, and it comes at a perfect time for Boston when they're trying to come together to make a dominant run postseason.
And I have one more player, and this is not who's hot or who's not. This guy is who's simmering. He's kind of middle line there. So I just wanted to shout out Jackson Holiday. Since being brought back up on July 31st, Jackson he looked a little more ready for the big leagues this time around. His average still isn't great, but Holiday has 7 hits in 5 games. That's pretty good. One being a home run, the other one being a granny slam. So he's also earned himself 7 ribbies, 2 walks, and 14 total bases in his second stint here. I think everyone was expecting him when he was coming out of the gate, more like Jackson Merrill's season's been, or maybe a Paul Skeens. But that's just not really normal even for top prospects. So if Jackson can continue to simmer, and then if he starts to full-on cook, he'll be a nice all-arounder for the O's now and also in the future.
Yeah, he's absolutely balling out. And then now we're going to go over we made it like a personal segment, I guess you could call it. We picked a couple of topics we wanted to go over. I'm going to start it off. Gentlemen, you need to blind rank these 5 MLB City Connect jerseys.
Oh.
I'm going to give you 5 teams, and you got to put them in your rankings, and then we'll see if our editor can post them up on the YouTube. So your first jersey is going to be the Stros, the Space City Unis.
I love those, and I don't want to be biased, but I know there's some great ones out there, and we put it at 3, right in the middle.
I've seen those things. Those are pretty dope. I love my boy Orbit. Those are number 2 for me.
Alrighty, moving on. This is one of my personal favorites, the Angels. A little surfing.
Oof, I'm gonna have to take a look at that picture there. Angels City Connect.
They look even better on Justin Herbert. Shout out the Chargers.
Those cream colored ones, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is pretty sweet. That just looks like, for me, you know, something straight out of a pizza place. I'm gonna go 4 on that.
I'm gonna go 4 as well. They look kind of plain to me.
Alrighty, haters. Moving on to, I'd say, kind of a hot topic, because if you love it, you love it, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. I think you know where I'm going with this, and we're going to San Diego. The Miami jerseys.
Dude, those are so sick. I think, and I know there's probably one out there that's missing, but it just matches the flair, the beach vibe that San Diego brings. I'm putting that at 1.
I also got to go number 1. It is my hometown team, but I think it just represents the fandom of the Padres really well.
And then this one at number 4, might be my favorite all time. There's a couple up there, but Colorado Rockies. We're talking about the license plate for Colorado. Got the green in there. Can't go wrong with green.
I've seen them before. I got to go number 3 for me.
Yeah, for me, if it's the one that's just green with the mountain range, that's for me number 5. I mean, it represents the city, Rocky Mountains, but just for the design of it, it's just not doing much for me. Kind of the same problem as like the Angels. It's just gonna go last spot for me.
And then our final one is gonna be the Reds with the Cincy across the chest. I just saw that in person today at the game for the first time. Votto jersey, spicy.
Wow, that is clean. Oh my gosh.
That looks insane in that jersey.
It has to go second spot for me. But that gives the Padres City Connect a run for its money for sure.
I mean, obviously it goes in my 5th, but that's all I have left. But I think they're pretty cool. I respectfully kind of disagree with you with the Rockies. Like, these and the Angels are just like the name.
Yeah.
There's nothing special really going
How about
on.
Rockies last?
Yeah, I know. I don't agree with you. So it's just a name on Cincy and the Angels. At least the Rockies got the mountains in there and gives it a little bit of extra flair. Not that I'm saying the Reds are bad, but I would probably swap Reds and Angels if I could take it back. But I got to put it in 5.
Hey, you go to Ohio and see how grim it is, all right? There's a reason why they're all black.
Hey, we're gonna post it on Insta. Comment below on that post who you think ranked them better. And then I just got one question for you with a little bit of the spiel going on. So obviously we talked about big trades. We said Crochet, probably one of the hottest names in the trade market, stayed with the White Sox. And for me, I wanted to know your guys' takes on it because I looked at it as a double-edged sword. So I think that for someone, this is his first year as a starter, I think his demands were too high. I think he dug himself a hole, which was why he wasn't traded. I don't think anyone was willing to put up what he was asking for. But I think that this could actually benefit him in the long run because if he continues to play good and keep it up, then I think that he's set up even better in the future because there's no pressure there. If he were to have been traded, let's say, to the Dodgers, there's got to be so much pressure for him to play the rest of the season and kind of be their ace right now. You know, that their pitching's been depleted. Padres, you know, they certainly could have used it, maybe not been their ace depending on how he would have gone. But we see here he's in a low pressure situation with the White Sox. He can hopefully build up and keep going. And for his sake, I hope so. Hopefully he can build up his stock and we'll see next year. I don't know how long his contract is with them, but I think maybe he could be getting a fat contract coming up or be traded even more so than he was at the stock level, more so next year than it was this year.
You know, I kind of I agree with you, Ryan. I think regardless, he was going to get a contract either way. But was he thinking he's in the NBA that he can demand stuff in trades? I haven't seen that very much in the MLB. So I don't know. Maybe to some people before the trade deadline, that put off some red flags for his personality. I get he's trying to protect himself long term against injury, things like that, but putting demands out like you're a bank robber, that's not going to work. And that kind of landed him in a spot still in Chi-Town to live out the rest of the season.
Well, obviously in his head, it was going to go a lot different because he must have thought, I'm that dude. I pitched one half the season and blew out my arm. But hey, my half season's good, so someone's going to bite. No, it didn't happen. But I think it's going to benefit him now because, like you said, Southside, there's no expectation. The only expectation is to stay alive, literally. So, with that, you know, Crochet, pitch a good rest of your season. You know, make sure you're healthy through it. And then come winter meetings, we're going to be having those same talks again when the rumor mill starts swirling, right, when trades open back up. So, I think just the whole demands, he just ended up pushing it another half season later, which I think is going to benefit him because obviously that was a big headline. Oh, he demanded too much. Yeah, but if he does a full season again of his filthy stuff, and he's a great pitcher, but if he does it for a full season now, that's going to attract that same value and even more, especially with how many years of control he has.
What do you got for us, Jay?
So speaking of MLB The Show, which I am an avid player of, a new 99 overall card, Josh Gibson, has been added. He's the hottest card on the market, and he's a primary catcher with secondary positions at first base, third base, DH, and all 3 outfield positions. He's also having the number 1 true position spot for all catcher, first base, third base, and DH in the whole entire game. So if you move him to any of those positions, he is still the number 1 card for that position. It's much deserved recognition for one of the all-time greats whose stats were entered into the Baseball Hall of Fame this year. And based on stats and his Hall of Fame plaque that was inducted, it says that he hit over 800 home runs in his career, one being in 1930, where an 18-year-old Josh sent a ball over the 457-foot center field fence of Forbes Field in Pittsburgh. Definitely one of the weirdest fields in baseball history with the wacky dimensions of the outfield fences out there. So shout out Josh Gibson, one of the GOATs, and could be argued off of stats that he is the GOAT.
Well, that is true. I mean, a lot of the stats, he is number 1 now. But honestly, Give me Nick Castellanos on the day of national controversy. If I need someone, 2 outs, I need a walk-off home run, let me find it on the calendar, something crazy happened. Okay, give me Castellanos on the plate, give him the bat. But Josh Gibson's a close second, though.
Alrighty, Micah.
Man, this one, I specifically requested to the boys, let me have this last.
Let him cook.
So, Rylan brought out Garrett Crochet. Is probably the best player that didn't get traded. Now, let me tell you the best trade that happened at this year's deadline. It's one that mainstream media has not discussed. It's only one that diehard fans of the specific team have been discussing. The trade? The Padres trading away Enyel De Los Santos to the Yankees. You're probably saying, big man, why this trade? Who cares? Now, let me get this out of the way. I am sure EDLS is an amazing man. I'm sure he's an amazing father. I know he has put in countless hours to get where he is today working on his craft, pitching at the highest level of MLB. I can't discount that. Now, let me tell you this. Here are my top 3 things in my entire life that were the hardest things to watch. Number 1, any version of Cats. Doesn't matter if it's a Broadway play or that crappy version from 2020 with Idris Elba. Hot trash. Number 2, Gulliver's Travels with Jack Black and those micro people. Buns. Now, number 3, watching Enyel De Los Santos pitch for the Padres. And I did my research. De Los Santos has the most home runs allowed by any relief pitcher in all of 2024. 11. This earned him the nickname from avid Padre fans on social media, Enyel De Los Meatballs, because that's what he serves up. All right? And here's the kicker. Back in 2017, he was a top prospect for the Pods. I didn't even know that. I had to research that. But then he was traded for, let me get your input on this. Y'all know who Freddie Galvis is? Y'all remember him?
Didn't he, go back to his home country to play for their team?
I have no idea.
See, I know him because I just know random players, but, it really didn't matter. But here's the thing. People were up in arms about that trade, thinking they were letting go of some hot prospect. And that's what we thought he was going to be, too. When he was traded from Cleveland back to San Diego for Scott Barlow, they're like, oh, it's probably going to be a cheaper version. He was arbitration eligible, it was going to be lower. But man, whenever he would come out onto the mound, a grim aura was cast over Petco Park. It was as if thousands of Padre fans were about to suffer, and they knew it. But with that trade, they were expecting, a cheap, good relief pitcher. But instead they got playoff Pedro Baez. But instead of serving up meatballs in the playoffs, they're serving it in regular season. But here's the thing. When this trade happened, I'm like, man, I can picture it now. Here it is. Game 2 of a wild card matchup of Yankees and Royals in KC. Extra innings. KC's up 1-0 in the series, but they're down 1 with Bobby Witt up at the bat. Runner at second base. EDLS on the mound. He serves up one of those meatballs. 95 down the middle. Bobby Witt cranks that all the way into the waterfall in left field. Royals win. Yankees go home, and then EDLS needs to be on the watch list for his own safety in New York. And you know what? I really wish it would work. Because when you look at him, he is a stature of a man, but it just didn't work out. And you know what? And if this works out exactly how I just said it, I need John Boy or Barstow to get on the podcast. Because I might have something.
You didn't have to rip into him that hard.
I had to.
Every single time he comes up to the mound, it's at least one home run.
I always had
at least
to have a spoon on me, just in case I need to gouge the eyeballs.
Dude, when he came up against the Dodgers, bases loaded, I knew we were kicked. I knew it.
You knew you were going to suffer.
Man, well, we're running long on time. It's supposed to be a shorter podcast. It'll be shorter than last week. We'll close it out here with the series of the week. Kind of growing on me on the favorite segment, even though I am absolute trash at this. We'll post it again on Insta. I went 0 for 4. Jay batted 500. And Stinking Big Man went 4 for 4, even with the split series. I don't know how he's cheating, but I guarantee you he is. But the one I wanted to highlight was the Battle of Texas, the 3-game set versus the Rangers and Astros. I think since we talked last, I think the Rangers have actually gone down. I think they're 5.5 games back of the division lead. But even still, if they were to go in there and take games away from the Astros, is it in Houston or is it?
It's in Arlington.
So if they're at home, they have the advantage. If they're able to take 2 of 3 or even 3 of 3, that could cut the lead by so much. It could be huge. So I think that's my game to watch for.
All right, so my game to watch for the series to watch for is Sox and Royals again, battling it out for the wild card. Yeah, so that's an interesting game coming up, and we got the Royals. Their last 10 games, they've averaged 6.2 runs a game. They've also hit 15 home runs in those last 10 games, with their ERA looking around 4.14. It's not great. It's not bad either. We've got the Red Sox, their last 10 games. They've averaged 7 runs, so more runs on average than the Royals in their last 10, but their ERA is 6.4. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, so for my series, this is one we have a treat. We have a 3-game series at the beginning of the week that might be a preview of the 2024 ALCS. My series, Chicago White Sox versus the Oakland Athletics.
Talking about ALCS.
ALCS? Oh.
Talking about the championship?
No, the American League Crap Series.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and then we did last week, we did 4 series. We each picked one, and then we threw in an extra one just to spice it up. The 4th one this week, I'm going to go with the rematch of the 2023 NLCS game. It's a 4-game series, and it's Phillies versus Snakes. I think that could be boom or bust. I think if it's going to have to go one way or the other, I think I'm leaning Phillies, even despite their struggles. This could also go down the middle, or the Snakes could take it. Honestly, I don't know which way it's going to go. But for you boys, who are you taking? You taking Rangers or Astros?
I'm going Astros.
My bias is going to pull me as well, Astros.
Yeah, I want the Rangers to win. I like the Rangers, but I think you can't bet against Houston, so I'm going Houston.
All right, guys, what you taking? Sox, the good Sox, Red Sox, or the Royals?
Hey, don't discount a good White Sox. But anyways, for the sake of the series, though, you're going to have to go with the Royals. Brady Singer, Seth Lugo, Cole Reagans on the mound for Kansas City at home. I think that's just going to be quite enough.
I think I'm going to go Casey as well.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Again, just based off those 10-game stats, both offenses have been crazy. So I think it's going to be a slugfest out there in Kansas City. But again, the starting rotation of the Royals will get it done.
For sure. And then for the hottest series of the season so far in that preview, we got the White Sox or the A's.
I'm going A's. They were bottom of the barrel last year. They have picked it up a little bit. They're still not winning anything this year, but I mean, the White Sox are 0-20 in their last 20, so I think we would go with the A's there.
Gotta keep the streak alive, baby. So we're going with the A's.
Hey, you know what? You really thought of that with some logical thinking, and you're thinking of it. I like the idea, but here's the thing: with teams like this, they can't even win right. They're gonna break the streak right at 22, so they don't break the record or tie the record for the most consecutive losses in history, which was started by the Phillies in, I believe, 1961. So they can't even win right. So I'm giving the White Sox a series win there.
All right, well, we'll finish it off with our last series. I'm going to go Phillies, 3 out of 4. I went with them last week against the Yanks, and boy, was I wrong. But this series can go anyway, but I think I'm going to go 3 out of 4. I'm going to go with the Phils.
I'm going to go with the Phils as well. I always believe in the Phils.
I think here, that's tough. Got 2 teams heading in separate directions.
Don't say split again.
I don't think this one's. I don't think this one's going to be a split. I think the Snakes are going to take this one. They're hot. Teams coming together, and it's in Arizona.
I'm going to say Phils again, just for the sake of the pods.
Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. We appreciate it. Shout out to all of our 18 listeners of the first episode. Let's go. And second episode in the books. We got our first one going up on YouTube. Super excited for that. To make sure to go check that out. We'll have that up in the bio. And I'm sure we missed some things. If there's anything that you wanted us to talk about maybe next week, something we missed, let us know. And we'll talk more next week.
For sure.
This was Yucking It Up with the boys.
Let's go. Episode 2 in the books. See y'all next week.
I see all those Spotify searches. Why are you not listening? We'll see you next week.
Yeah, go on. Let's go.